Well, guys, Leon Edwards' return to the octagon didn't go the way any of us had hoped. Nick and I are breaking down the main event and talking about what happens next right now. What's up, Barnhill family? Welcome back to the channel.
Yo.
So, Nick, the 600-day absence of Leon Edwards didn't exactly end the way that we had all hoped. I had hoped to see Leon get back in there, have an excellent fight with Belal. It looked like an excellent fight on paper. They literally had the same record going into the fight.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they have the same record coming out of the fight.
Yeah, and the funniest thing about all of that is we were talking about it right before the fight, is we were like, literally the only way they can have the same record leaving this fight is if something crazy happens or there's a draw, and sure enough, that's what happens. Listen, if you're a Leon Edwards fan, you just can't catch a break.
No.
This guy, at 600 days off, all you want to do is see him get in the cage, and then not even a full round goes through, and he's already, the fight's over. It's a crazy foul that can't continue the fight. It's just a mess from start to finish, and you got to feel bad for Belal Muhammad because he was a company man. He stepped up for a tough night out, took the job, and unfortunately, it didn't go his way in the form of his own safety.
Yeah, it was really, really unfortunate, and I feel so bad for Belal Muhammad.
Me too.
And a lot of people in the post-fight, and I've seen on social media, are saying, look, Leon has come in, he's back. He showed some really good skill. He showed that during this almost 2-year layoff, he's not just been sitting around on the sofa. He's been training. He's been improving. And I personally thought that this is a new and improved Leon Edwards. I said in the first round, he looks very good. And Belal is no slouch. Belal absolutely deserved to be in there. I don't care what anybody says. He's a very tough opponent, and he's had an excellent couple of years.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are saying, including Dean Thomas in the post-fight that he did with Michael Chiesa and Karen Bryant, that he believes that what he saw out of Leon and the skill that he saw out of Leon was enough to say, we don't need to run that back with Belal. We saw enough to know where Leon stands and go ahead and put him in there with Muhammad. As much as I do love Dean Thomas and respect his opinion, I'm going to have to disagree with him 100% on this one. You can't come in a super tough division when you have people like Colby Covington, Jorge Masvidal, Gilbert Burns, floating around in the top. Take over 600 days off, come back in, poke somebody in the eye, get a no contest decision, and get thrust into a title fight.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of problems around that.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And like Dean Thomas said, he did look very good. I won't take anything away from what we did see as far as the skills of Leon Edwards. They're very much still there, and he's even improved on a lot of them. But Belal Muhammad also looked great.
Yeah.
He was able to close the distance a couple of times, clinch up, do some cage work. For the amount of time we saw the fight, we saw some very impressive fight skills out of both of them. And they displayed a lot of things they've been working on. And, if you go back a month ago, if you go back maybe 6 weeks ago, Belal Muhammad was not one of the names we were talking about at the top of 170. But if he would have been able to get a victory over Leon last night, he for sure would have been one of the guys at 170 that really mattered. And, I just happened to look at Leon Edwards going in there, and while he did look great with some of the striking, he looked fast, and he looked very big too, by the way.
He did.
And Belal looks a little undersized. I feel like maybe 155 might be the place for him because he looked so undersized compared to Leon.
Actually.
But he was able to close the distance, clinch up a little bit, and work some of that cage work. And I just think that if you were to take Belal out of that situation and put Khamzat Chimaev, who was supposed to be in there, into those positions, that could cause a little bit more trouble for Leon Edwards. And then you think of even further up into the list of people that Leon's been wanting to fight, Colby Covington. You put him up against the cage clinching with Leon, or Kamaru Usman clinched up. That's a problematic place for Leon Edwards to find himself. And if Belal Muhammad was able to do it in a round's time, then I would have to imagine that those guys would be able to as well.
Yeah, and you also have to kind of take Belal Muhammad's name out of the equation when you're talking about what to do going forward here. Because if, like you said, if that was Colby Covington, if it was Leon versus Colby for a #1 contender, who's going to fight next for the title, and Leon poked Colby in the eye and he couldn't continue, everybody would be saying, run this back. It's got to be Leon versus Covington again, and then the winner will fight him. Same thing with Khamzat Chimaev. So you have to give Belal Muhammad the same courtesy here. This is a guy that stepped up on 3 weeks' notice, that was a major underdog, that showed a lot of heart and said, I'm a company man. I'm going to do what's required of me. I'm going to dare to be great. And through absolutely no fault of his own, he couldn't continue the fight.
Yeah.
And it doesn't sit well with me to punish a guy who did nothing wrong.
No, he absolutely deserves another shot. And when you win a fight in a combat sport, no matter what it is, but when you win a fight, it pushes you forward in your career. When you lose a fight, unfortunately, you take a step back. And when you get that rare opportunity to have a no contest or a no decision, it's even playing field for both opponents, and nobody moves up or down on the ladder. I don't think Leon Edwards should lose his ranking where it is currently, and I don't think Belal Muhammad should lose his ranking. I think both of those guys need to sit there, and obviously you need to let Belal Muhammad's eye clear up and make sure he's good by the doctors, make sure nothing serious happened. And then we need to run that one back because, I mean, that was the fight that was signed. That's the fight we were told we were going to get about a month ago, and these guys have trained hard for it. I feel like that's the fight we need to see, even though on paper, the number 13 guy doesn't really seem to stand a chance against the number 3 guy. If you ask me, the amount of fighting we did see last night between those two guys proved that Belal Muhammad did deserve to be in there.
Yep.
And while he might have not won the exchanges that we saw, he wasn't finished already. So, you have to give him some credit.
Absolutely. And you can't gauge what would have happened in that fight by what did happen.
No.
Now, I was watching that fight, and I predicted in our predictions video that Leon Edwards would win this fight.
Right.
Watching the fight after the first couple of minutes, I said Leon Edwards is going to win this fight. But saying that, believing that, and people thinking that is a different thing than him actually getting his hand raised.
Yep.
And I think if you're going to put Leon Edwards into a title fight, he's got to get his hand raised sometime that wasn't 2019.
Right.
He's got to get his hand raised in 2021 in order to deserve a title shot against Kamaru Usman. And I think the perfect way to do that is allow him to run it back with Muhammad. Yeah. Muhammad, we've seen him, he's got an incredible gas tank. We've seen him be a slow starter and then pick it up and snag rounds 3, 4, and 5. Leon Edwards was by no means out of that fight.
Right.
It's not like, okay, I saw all I needed to see, and now Leon's going on to the championship. It's just I didn't see it that way.
Yeah, and if you're a fan of Leon Edwards and you liked what you saw and you think Leon deserves a title shot and you'd like to see him get a title shot, then you should be clamoring for a rematch with Belal Muhammad. Because if you believe that he was outclassing him and is so much better than him, leaps and bounds, 10 rankings isn't even enough between them because you think it was such a mismatch, then you should be going, yeah, UFC, you know what? Let them rematch, because if this is a number 1 contenders match, I want to see my boy Leon Edwards get the title fight, and I think this is a mismatch of all mismatches. But it seems like Leon Edwards fans aren't thinking like that. They're like, no, this was too easy of a fight for us for our number 1 contendership, so we don't even want to fight this guy. But in reality, I don't see it that way. I think Belal Muhammad was working his game plan. I think he's not the fastest starter. I think he has an endless gas tank, and I think he has an accumulation style, not really of just punches, but he grapples you really hard. He's kind of like the stereotypical 2020, 2021 170er. Great with their striking, but they aren't like doing anything fancy, but they'll put you up against the cage. They'll hold you there. They'll stay very active. They'll put you on the ground a little bit. You'll get back up. You'll be tired, and then he'll win rounds that way. That's how Belal Muhammad fights. That's how he wins. And, I just would like to see this fight again. I personally think that stranger things have happened in a number 13 versus a number 3 being a number 1 contenders matchup in this sport. But, there's a place for both of these guys at the top of the heap.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And who knows what's going to happen with Jorge Masvidal and Kamaru Usman. Yeah. They were saying at first that that's going to happen. And maybe it's going to be the Ultimate Fighter. Maybe it's going to be, they're just going to do the match in September, as Jorge had sort of alluded to. Now, Kamaru is saying, I don't want to be that generous anymore. I thought about it now. But likely that fight could very well get made.
Right.
And if it happens in September, you give Belal, a couple of months to recover, and then you make that fight during the summer, and then it can kind of line up that the winner of Belal versus Leon fights the winner of Jorge versus Usman.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of parity there. Not that I think Jorge would win, but who wouldn't love to see Leon get his chance to take a crack at Mr. Three-Piece and the Soda for the title.
Yeah, there's a few ways that could happen where we could see Gamebred versus Leon Edwards, and I think that would be such a fun fight. I think Gamebred has to answer for the Three-Piece and the Soda that
at
he's
some point
already
he
sent.
does, yeah.
And they're going to make that fight, and the promotion's already there. They could sell that, and obviously George Masvidal's a star, so we don't need to do much to help him sell some fights tickets, but I feel like him and Leon Edwards would be a great fight stylistically, but also they would do what the crowd wants to see as far as the pre-fight antics go.
Yeah, no question about it. And I want to talk specifically about this issue of the eye pokes now, because this has become a major problem in the UFC. And we were talking about it last night. And, I think Michael Chiesa said something really smart in the post-fight show that they did. And he said that I think a lot of this trouble is coming from guys that train predominantly in boxing gloves. And when you see, and Leon Edwards comes from the UK, we know the UK is very boxing heavy. They've got a lot of great Olympic boxers. So likely he's doing a lot of work in 16-ounce boxing gloves. And many techniques in boxing kind of call for an open palm, distance range finding with the glove, but because your full hand is covered, it's impossible to poke somebody in the eye in that sense. So it creates and forms bad habits. I personally love the gloves that we use most of the time in training, and they're similar to what they used to use in Pride. They're MMA gloves that allow you to still grapple, but instead of your fingers being held sort of parallel with the floor, if you hold your hand like that, they're almost held at a little bit more than a 45-degree angle. I think personally we should consider changing the gloves here because, Belal Muhammad, for all intents and purposes, it looks like he's going to make a full recovery with his eye, but it could have been, it could have gone the other way.
Michael
Bisping has got a glass eye. This is like a real problem that, a fighter who was a champion in Bisping is now going to deal with for the rest of his life. It's a major problem. It needs to be addressed. And I think there needs to be, obviously it was unintentional, but there's got to be some more point deductions or something to, if your hand is moving forward towards your opponent's face, the fist must be closed, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's such a tricky situation. I think Michael Chiesa is onto something when he says that. And, oftentimes when you're watching boxing, you just assume that their hands are closed fist like this. But if you're training every day and you're trying to preserve your hands, you wind up not keeping them as tense as you would, or as people would assume you would in a fight. And they end up being right here. It's actually easier to block shots with your hands open rather than like this, and move them effectively. Also, if you're just walking around daily in your regular life, you wouldn't walk around like this because it's strenuous. It's hard to do. So when you're fighting, it's the same thing. You want to conserve your energy so your hands are here. But when they're, like you said, when your hands are moving forward, they have to be closed. And, the gloves you're talking about that we use, they do sort of, first of all, they don't hinder the grappling really at all from what I've felt. And I wear both types of gloves, the smallest 4-ounce gloves you can find, 16-ounce boxing gloves, everything. And when I grapple in them, I don't feel that big of a difference. Obviously, the 16-ounce boxing gloves, when you grapple, you do tend to feel a little bit of a difference.
Obviously,
But the MMA ones, you really don't feel much of a difference. And I just feel like everybody's getting so comfortable sticking their fingers out and moving in and out like this. And a lot of times they'll go throw strikes and they'll risk their safety and come into the fire zone and throw shots and then stick their hands out like this to block anything coming. And it's kind of a natural reaction that you have. But instead of doing that, because you're seeing too many eye pokes, people need to start shelling up and making sure that they're not doing that. Because look at last week. We had the Peter Yan fight that got stopped to an illegal blow. And this week, now we have the main event. And Peter Yan was one of the main events. This was the main event of, unfortunately, not a great UFC card. There was a lot of great fights. There wasn't a lot of great names on it. And I just feel like we can't keep having these issues and tearing up cards. And obviously it's the worst when it's in the main event situation, but you feel for anybody on any stage of the card, prelim, early prelims, anybody that gets a victory taken away from them or gets an opportunity taken away from them from an illegal blow that frankly could be avoided.
Well, it could have and it should have, because the technique that Leon was trying to implement there was he was trying to disguise the body kick with a straight right.
Yeah.
And so when you see that a lot. You see a lot of times somebody will throw the straight right, they'll recoil, and then they'll throw the body kick. Sometimes if they're trying to disguise the body kick, they'll throw the straight right, and then almost with the momentum, they'll send that leg over. So you're seeing and looking at body kick. Maybe you raise your hands a little, or sorry, seeing and looking at a straight right, and so you lift your hands a little bit, and then boom, your body gets cracked with a kick.
Right.
That was what I believe Leon was trying to do. And it would have just behooved him to just throw the straight right, but don't put the power and the emphasis on that. Put the power and the emphasis on the kick.
Right.
But I think we got to do something. I think the gloves need to be addressed.
Yeah.
It's becoming a real problem. I don't see why they couldn't use the gloves that we train in. Obviously, there's a lot of padding because they're sparring MMA gloves. You would reduce the padding just to where it protects the knuckles, but it keeps the fingers down. There's really no need for you to be open palm. Even with range finding, because that's not true range, because when you close your fist, you've taken the distance of your fingers away, so it's not even true range finding either.
And it's the repercussions that, or lack thereof, that is causing this issue, because everybody knows that you get 2 or 3 good shots of eye pokes before you start to get your points taken away in the UFC.
Right.
And that's a problem, because people are willing to get a couple of warnings and risk maybe getting a point taken away to really, hurt their opponent. And if Belal Muhammad, if he would have been able to put a poker face on and tell the ref and the doctor that he could continue, there's 0% chance that he would win that fight the way he was acting right after the fight.
Right.
And I'm not saying he was acting, but the way he was behaving, I guess I should say. He was on the ground. He was spazzing out. His adrenaline was probably just spewing out of him.
Yeah.
And he's just mentally, you're gone at that point. There's 0% chance you're coming back from that and you can put it together for another 25 or 20 minutes of a fight. Like, he would have been done even if he would have been able to mask all the pain, mask the major injury on his face, and continue. So it's a real shame. And like the main event, not the main event, but the main card had 2 bad illegal malfunctions happen.
Yeah.
Leon Edwards and Eric Anders, who looked like he was winning the fight. And then
also, Eric, did you watch the pay-per-view last week?
Right.
Like, I get that one wasn't nearly as egregious and intentional as the Jan strike was, but I mean, come on. Like,
Right.
how can that happen on such a big stage last week, and then you're winning a fight and literally throw a very similar strike?
At least let 6 months go by so you can say you forgot about that one.
Also, the knee thing is like, I don't get it, because it's like, and just to switch gears to that for a quick second, when you talk about like throwing that knee in that situation, we've trained for years. Never have I ever been in an MMA gym, a kickboxing gym, a jiu-jitsu gym, any gym that said, okay, today we're going to work on the technique of kneeing your opponent in the face when he's on the ground.
Yeah.
That's not a technique that anybody practices that anywhere I've ever been.
No.
Maybe in some backyard brawl they teach you how to do that, how to throw that technique, but I've never been shown by any coach worth his salt how to throw the knee to the head when your opponent's down. So it's not like something that is, just repetition. I can't help myself. Like, this is not something that's trained.
Yeah.
You did that for whatever reason, I have no idea. And it cost him, in his case, it cost him a win.
Right.
It didn't cost him a disqualification, but it wasn't all that different from Peter Jan's knee.
And if you if you train at a gym that teaches that kind of stuff, maybe try to find a new gym. But
Side note,
But unlike Leon Edwards, Leon's is something that he's working, and now it's a muscle memory type of thing where he's throwing his hands out like this at all times. Daniel Cormier was actually really bad for that. He fought like this at all times. He would stand there literally, both hands, shoulders forward. He would take a lot of kicks to the stomach because he would always stand so forward with the big target right here. But it's just something that people have developed as a muscle memory, and now it's really hard for fighters to shake. But the repercussions is what we have to deal with. Like, should we make it a mandatory point taken away every time somebody gets poked in the eye? I tend to think that as of right now, that would work better than what's currently happening, but I don't think that's the perfect solution. I think we need to figure out what will work, but right now, I think guys are more than happy to get a couple warnings, maybe lose a point here and there, especially in a round that they're winning, to get an advantage in the fight.
Yeah, and this is why I have listen, I love Leon Edwards. I'm glad to see him back. I think he looked better than ever.
Like a stud.
I drove to San Antonio 3 hours and paid my hard-earned money to be in the stadium when he fought RDA in 2019. So I'm not trying to bash on Leon Edwards here, but I am going to say that you can't. This is why I have a problem with just giving him Kamaru. I thought Leon looked fantastic.
Yeah.
I thought he looked better than he did when I saw him fight in 2019. I think that he could be a champion at 170. But if you set the precedent that you take a long layoff, or you for whatever reason, and then you come back, and this is your number one contender's fight, it is for you. It isn't for your opponent. And you end up, and those situations do happen quite often, where if this person wins, it's a title fight. If that person wins, it's not. And you can then game the system. So again, not saying that was Leon's intention whatsoever, but if you set the precedent that all you got to do is just poke the guy in the eye, he can't continue, and you make it look like an accident, you get a no contest, and then boom, you're thrust right into a title shot. Leon didn't mean to do it. The next guy actually might say, I'm going to try that out.
Yeah, and by hook or by crook, I'm going to get my title shot. And, it's pretty remarkable that Leon's been able to maintain his high ranking after a 2-year layoff. And, most people with his layoff time wouldn't be able to do that. But his resume and his skill set and kind of his body of work had sort of spoke for itself. And it's not all completely his fault that he didn't fight over 2 years. But, I certainly don't think I saw enough out of Leon Edwards to warrant a title fight against Kamaru Usman. And I just feel like it would serve Leon Edwards and Leon Edwards fans better to see him get a little bit more time in there. It doesn't appear ring rust is a thing that bothers him all that much, or it's going to affect him all that much. He's kind of like Dominic Cruz in that matter. But if I was Leon Edwards or one of his big fans, I would be hoping that he could get at least another couple rounds in the octagon before he goes in there for a title fight, by the way, would be against a guy that he's already fought and lost to. If he loses 2 to Kamaru, there's 0% chance he gets a third one.
Yeah, that's why I wouldn't rush into, even if I am a major fan of Leon, it's a diehard Leon Edwards fan, I wouldn't push for an immediate shot with Kamaru Usman because I'm not sure he wins that fight as it sits right now. And then, like you said, Kamaru could be the champion for a very long time. Yeah. And so Leon...
that's what it's looking like.
Yeah, Leon could... I'm done picking against Kamaru Usman. So
you just wind up in no man's land. If Leon were to fight him and lose to him again, he's not really built for 185. He can't make 150.
You end up being the Robert Whittaker of 170. You can beat everybody but the champ, and you're just stuck. But not to say that Robert doesn't have a path back to the belt, because he certainly does. But and I think personally, just watching that fight and seeing how it was going and watching body language and just having watched fights for a long time, I think Leon was going to get a finish in the end of the second, early third round. And so and I don't think if you run that fight back 2 months from now, 3 months from now, that it would go any differently. But saying he's going to get his hand raised, like I said, and actually getting his hand raised are two totally different things. And I think for him to get that title shot, he's got to get his hand raised.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you.
Well, guys, what do you think? It was obviously a very unfortunate ending to a great fight. What was becoming a great fight. Nick and I both think they should run it back. Do you guys agree? Do you guys disagree? And let us know in the comments. We love having good debate with you guys in the comments. As always, we appreciate you watching our videos. If you haven't already and you enjoyed the content, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. And we will catch you in the next one, guys. Have a great day.
Peace.